All right, hello everybody. So today we're going to talk about chapter 11, the muscular system, and really what we're looking at are naming the muscles, understanding how the muscles work together and separately. We're also going to be looking at some spots of connective tissue and so forth. But basically, these are the muscles that you need, the basic set of muscles that you need to know for the next exam. Now, you are going to be looking at certain things that aren't muscles, like the epicranial aponeuroses, not neuro, it's aponeuroses. We'll talk about what an aponeurosis is in a little bit. But basically, you should be able to, if I point to this muscle right here, right there, you should be able to write down sartorius. So remember in the last exam, remember on the bone exam, you had identifications to do. This is going to happen in this exam as well. These are the most superficial, a listing of the most superficial muscles in the body. There are some that are deeper that I will have other pictures of in a little bit. The muscles of the face and the neck, especially the neck, can be a little bit confusing. But let's move on into our muscle groups and how to name muscles. So muscles are movers in the body. These organs allow us to lift things, move things. And so, for example, the biceps brachii helps you flex the lower arm and pull things up, all right, towards your face. So, for example, you want to take a drink of water from a glass. The biceps brachii and the brachioradialis help pull your pull the glass up to your face, right? Now, these two muscle groups are doing the similar jobs. The biceps brachii are the prime mover. They're doing the heavy lifting, you could say, but the brachioradialis is a synergistic muscle. Synergistic or synergy means they're working together. So most of the work is done by the prime mover, and then synergistic muscles are helping the process happen. Now, this picture, figure 11.3, is in your book, and it looks really crummy on my slide. The reason why I left this in here was so that you can go to figure 11.3 and look at muscle shapes and fiber alignment. Different muscles have different shapes, and those shapes help them do their jobs. Fortunately, I have other pictures that I can review those shapes with you on, but you can always go back to figure 11.3 in the OpenStax book to check those out. So there are four major fascicle arrangements. So remember, fascicles are groups of muscle fibers aligned in parallel. So parallel means that basically you have organs that are running adjacent to each other. So these are three parallel lines. Fusiform muscles are spindle-shaped, parallel but tapered. So if you had fusiform muscles, they would look like this. Two fusiform muscles, all right? These aren't individual cells. These would be muscles in my lovely drawing. Each end of the muscle would connect to bone via a tendon. So this would be the muscle, and the center is the belly. And then each of these endings here are the aponeuroses, okay? And we'll get to that in a little bit. Convergent muscles are triangular, and what happens is you have fascicles that are coming together kind of like this, all right? And I have a better picture in a minute. Circular or sphincter muscles are concentric rings. These are usually found in blood vessels, digestive organs, and so forth, tubes, okay? So sphincters are very, very common in any type of tube that stuff moves through. So we'll get to that when we start talking about the circulatory system and the digestive system. Pinnate muscles, they have a tendon running down the edge or a central region, and then the muscle attaches like this. There are a couple of different types. There's the unipinnate, bipinnate, and multipinnate. We'll look at those in just a second. Oh, here we are. So the fusiform muscle, like I said, have the two tendon or aponeuroses at opposite ends, and the belly is in the middle. Most common example is the biceps brachii. Parallel fascicle arrangements, rectus abdominis. The rectus abdominis are the muscles that kind of make up the, six pack or eight pack, however, I don't even want to talk about my pack, okay? But the muscles in the abdominal region, and they're called parallel because they all run, like I said, in parallel of one another, and they have connective tissues breaking up the muscle fibers. The pectoralis major is a great example of convergent muscles, okay, or convergent fascicle arrangements. The orbicularis oculi, sorry, I was busy looking at another thing real quick. The orbicularis oculi is a circular muscle. This is not the same thing as a sphincter, okay? These circular muscles allow us to squint our eyes, to kind of help change the focus of something if something's far away or up close. Now, the pinnate muscles, the unipinnate, look kind of like a feather. Sort of like a feather. Bipinnate also look like feathers. And then the deltoid, the example of a multipinnate, is basically a bunch of bipinnates held together. The example of that is the deltoid over here in the shoulder. The rectus femoralis is a bipinnate muscle that's on the front of the thigh. And then the palmar interosus is one of the palmar muscles associated with your thumb. So here's just another example of parallel muscles when you look at the fascicles, how they're oriented. A cross-section of a convergent muscle, real thin muscle in terms of how they're how fascicles are oriented. They're kind of stacked shallowly, but because you have this broad band here, that gives you a lot of strength. Excuse me, the unipinnate, bipinnate, multipinnate muscles like the deltoid, rectus femoralis, and so forth. And then circular muscles, the orbicularis oris, when they're relaxed, your eye would just be relaxed. When they contract, your eye, you'd have a smaller hole through which you could see, basically. We also have oris muscles around our mouth, okay? So we'll get to that in a little bit. So muscles have names based on a few different things, all right? Remember we talked about this before. Basically, the name of an item can do with the way it looks, what it does, where you find it. So muscles can be named based on several characteristics. The location. So for example, intercostal muscles are located between the costa, between the ribs. Temporal muscle, associated with the temporal bone. You can have a shape, deltoid, trapezius, those are actually shapes. Size, maximus, minimus, longus, or brevis. Maximus and minimus, big, little. Longus, long. Brevis, shorter. The direction. Oftentimes you are going to find names like rectus, which means straight. Rectus abdominis, the straight muscles. There are rectus muscles that run parallel to your spinal column as well, or to your vertebral column. There are transverse and oblique muscles, and these are all relative to the midline of the body, the long axis, slicing right down the middle of the body from your nose down to your belly button. Sometimes you can name a muscle based on the number of origins: bicept, tricept, quadricept. What that means is that, check this out, you're going to love this. I loved this when I learned this. The bicept, right? Let's come back over here. The biceps brachii is fusiform. It has two ends, bicept. I wanted to come and look at the picture. Tricept, okay, and quadriceps. Let's look at the quadriceps. The quadriceps is a bipinnate muscle. So is if you look at the rectus femoralis, same thing. So the deltoid and the rectus femoralis have some other names that are related to, especially the quadriceps, insertion and the number of origins. The location of the attachments: sternocleidomastoid, good times, right? It has two origins, the sternum and the clavicle, and one insertion, the mastoid. So sternocleidomastoid. Typically, when you are talking about origins and insertions, the name of the origin comes first, and the name of the insertion comes second. And then you have the action of the muscle: flexor, extensor, adductor, and so forth. So we're going to look at different names of different muscle groups or we're going to look at all the different superficial muscle groups, and all those names are going to be derived from this group of characteristics. So here's an example, understanding muscle names in Latin. These all come from Latin naming. So adductor digi minimi, adductor, away from, duct, so away from is ab, right? Abductor. And duct is to move, so move away from, the muscle that moves away from, and the muscle that moves the little finger or the toe away. So that's kind of what these mean. So you could break it down this way. I am not going to ask you to do this on the exam though, just so you know. Muscles that attach to bone via tendons are always going to have that origin and insertion. The origin is the end of the muscle that's attached to the bone that doesn't move during a contraction, all right? So your biceps, the origin is in the shoulder. The insertion is the part that moves, okay? That's going to be moving your elbow, your forearm upwards. And so the insertion is the muscle that attaches to a bone that actually does the moving during the contraction. So origin, insertion, two good things to know. Agonist, antagonist, and synergistic muscles are interesting because agonists are the major muscle groups that are the prime movers. Okay, so if you have two muscles that are moving, let's say the leg, the femur, up, in one direction, those would be agonists. They're helping each other. Antagonists move in the opposite direction. The best example of antagonists that most people think about are the biceps brachii and triceps brachii. The biceps move the forearm upwards towards your face, and the triceps move the forearm back down. They work antagonistically or opposite of each other. They work in opposition of one another. And then we have synergistic muscles. These are muscles that typically are going to stabilize a joint during contraction and relaxation. Synergists are a big deal in the knee. So you have things like you have the rectus femoralis, right? The big muscle down the front. And then you have the, don't go blind. You have the rectus femoralis here. I just wanted to bring this up. And then you have the sartorius wrapping around, stabilizing the knee from the medial line. You also have the vastus lateralis right here associated with the iliotibial tract, IT band, okay? And then you, way up here, you have the tensor fascia latae. Yes, that is latte as in lateral, not as in latte as Starbucks. But these muscles are going to be associated with stabilization of the knee. Hence, we call those synergists. They help stabilize the joint during contraction. So antagonistic muscles work together to perform opposite actions. Agonists and synergists, I guess we just had another example or another set of definitions in your book. Okay, fascicle arrangements. What's interesting about the way that the fascicles or muscle fibers are organized is that the arrangement gives two properties to muscles. Number one, how powerful the muscle is. So if everything is organized in line with one another, right? Like the fusiform muscles, like your biceps, that's going to generate a lot of power. On the other hand, if you have fascicle arrangements that fan out, like the unipinnate, multipinnate, and so forth, that's going to increase the range of motion of that muscle. So let's look at the muscle groups again here. I love this. So right here, you can see that this would just be one big, powerful, chunky move, right? The biceps brachii, nice muscle that's going to produce a lot of power to lift something. On the other hand, the rectus femoralis, that also produces a lot of movement, strong movement too. But the rectus femoralis also allows for rotational movement of the leg. So when we walk and when we run, our leg just doesn't go up, down, like the biceps brachii does. The rectus femoralis allows this rotational movement. So you have contraction moving at angles, not just in, 180 degrees here, right? Up and down, vertically, basically. Here you have movement in the oblique plane, which is really important for, let's say you're running down a field and you're going to kick a soccer ball, right? You need to be able to turn. You need to be able to contract one side while relaxing the other for that fine movement to turn really quickly. It's pretty cool. So parallel muscles provide the biggest range of motion, right? They sometimes aren't as powerful, although the biceps brachii is pretty powerful. The most powerful muscles typically are shorter. They're wider and they're bi or multipinnate because you have an increased range of motion. And let's look at this one. Look at how much muscle you have here in the deltoid. Look at that. And the deltoids are very strong muscle. Over here, rectus femoralis. This is pretty strong too. It's also, again, you can move around a lot, but rectus femoralis is quite big. This is a great example of a muscle that is able to be strong and, or I guess I should say powerful, but also have a great range of mobility. This is a great design. Here, again, biceps brachii, very powerful, but not a great range of motion because everything's parallel. So that leads to us thinking about the lever systems. How are muscles forcing the bones or causing the bones to move around? Bones function as what we call levers in physics. The joint itself is the fulcrum, or the angle around which each bar or lever moves. Okay, so if you're going to draw this out, let's see if my pen will behave. This would be lever number 1. This would be lever number 2, and the joint is the fulcrum. So this could move up and down, right? Or it could move down here as well, up and down. So this is lever 1, this is lever 2, and this is the fulcrum. And this is the motion. So there are 3 basic lever types. There's the fulcrum between force and load. That's the first class. The second class is the load between the force and the fulcrum. What? And third class is force between fulcrum and load. This is a better example here. So if you look at first class lever systems, the fulcrum is located in the middle, but you have force, 2 forces pulling in the same direction. So for example, you have gravity pulling the head down, but you also have resistance so that the front of the skull gets pulled down too. So here's the fulcrum right here. Remember the name of this bone? Remember that? Temporal bone? Yeah. So the point of the temporal bone here is the fulcrum. Now, it's not the actual bone itself. It's where the origin of this muscle is. And I'm not going to name it now. Don't worry about it. When the movement's completed, the muscles are applying enough force to maintain your head upright, or the skull here upright, in a 90-degree plane here so that you could look forward. It's not like you're looking down all the time. So that's a first class lever. A second class lever is very, very powerful. So you have the fulcrum set in front, like where where the ball of your foot is. You have force here, applied force going up, and resistance, which is basically gravity here, pulling you down. And so when you stand up on your tippy toes, right, the gastrocnemius and the soleus here, gastrocnemius, and here's the soleus is a multipinnate muscle, are going to contract to move your body upwards so that you're standing on your toe. But the fulcrum is the ball of the foot. That's where the joint is. And then the third class lever, high speed, less power than the gastrocnemius and the soleus, right? Second class, these are really strong. These are all in your legs. Your first class lever system is going to be a fulcrum at your elbow, the force right here on your fist, and then the opposing force, or the applied force, moving upwards. This happens really fast. It is less power, but only compared to the second class, all right? So that allows you to move your fist upwards, hopefully not to your nose. So this is an example of the biceps brachii during a muscle contraction. You can see on this individual where the biceps brachii are, right here, right? And the triceps brachii are down here. And these are the deltoids right up here. And so basically the tendons on both ends are going to be making the aponeuroses. Right here is the belly of the muscle. All right, so the overview of the muscle system, this is basically identifying pretty much the same muscles as I have on that first figure in this lecture. You just can't see it very well on the way these slides came out. And that's why I put that first figure up there. I am going to have homework for you guys so that you have pictures to identify muscles that you could practice with. And basically, the rest of these slides are going to identify specific muscles. So muscles important in facial expression. Orbicularis oris, orbicularis oculi, right here. So orbicularis oris around the mouth, orbicularis oculi around the eye. Occipitofrontalis, the front belly. Those are the muscles that are associated with your eyebrows so that you can raise your eyebrows up, right? We have the buccinator right here helping you smile. The masseter is over here. I'm surprised it's actually not labeled on this. But basically, these are the basic muscles that you should know for the face, the most superficial muscles you should know. The ocula frontalis, the occipital belly is back here, and this is the occipitofrontalis, the frontal belly. And then you have the epicranial aponeuroses right up here, a big, thick band of connective tissue. These basically, this is going to tell you this table in your book. It's very small on this. What the movement is, what the target is. The target is going to be the thing that you're going to see movement in. The target motion, the direction, the prime mover, the origin, and the insertion names. I'm going to ask you to identify the muscles and maybe what they're doing. Not all muscles, you could say contract. It's easy to say what the muscles are doing in the face, though. Now, muscles of the eyes are very small muscles. I don't know if you've ever noticed that sometimes your eyes might kind of twitch a little bit if you've been reading a lot or you're on your phone a lot or on the computer a lot. The levator palpebrae muscle right up here, superioris, levator palpebrae superioris, is helping us hold our eyelids open. And sometimes those muscles and these smaller muscles, the superior rectus, inferior rectus, and medial rectus, they're called rectus because each of the muscles are aligned with one another, parallel. Each one of these muscles can sometimes get really tired and start having muscle spasms, and that's when your eye is twitching, all right? We have the inferior oblique that allows our eye to kind of spin a little bit in the socket. Superior oblique, which is up here, it doesn't cause any sort of rotational movement, but it kind of comes out, it's oriented at an angle. I wish I could show you, but you can't see the way. It's kind of like this at an angle rather than straight like this. Muscles that move the lower jaw. Here's the masseter. The masseter right here is usually very obvious. And then we have the temporalis muscle right up here associated with the temporal bone, and it overlays the temporal lobe as well when we get to the nervous system. And muscles for tongue movement, swallowing, and speech. I left these out simply because we usually don't talk about the tongue in great detail as a muscle in anatomy. You would probably cover that in a upper division anatomy class. But we do talk about the muscles of the anterior neck. So everything that I've put squares around on these figures, you need to know, okay? So we have the sternoglossus. So the origin is, the styloglossus is up in the chin area, okay? The geniohyoid, the digastric, the mylohyoid, the stylohyoid. These are all muscles that help us pull our chin down. I did leave these hyoid muscles alone because those are deeper muscles associated with the hyoid bone, and we typically don't see those in our dissections. We have the sternocleidomastoid. This is the biggest muscle that comes from the base of the occipital bone and wraps around to the front of your neck, and that allows you to turn your head and allows you to look up. Levator scapulae, slightly deeper, the trapezius that wraps over the back of your neck, the splenius capitis, which is another muscle that goes that's associated with the base of the occipital bone and attaches to your spinal column, basically. And then here's the levator scapulae here from the posterior view. I left these other muscles out because these are deeper muscles that are difficult, again, to see in models and in dissection. Muscles of the abdomen. This is really small. I would recommend looking at the figure on the first slide of this lecture, but we have the pectoralis major, which are the pectoral muscles. latissimus dorsi, which is right here in the back, the wings, right? Anterior serratus muscles. Remember the serrated muscles that we were looking at in our rabbit dissection? External obliques, which give us that kind of cut oblique angle when we're very, very lean. The rectus abdominis, which run vertically. Remember rectus? Like this. If you look deeper, which I'm not going to bug you about, but we have external obliques and internal obliques. We also have internal rectus muscles and internal intercostals, which you don't need to worry about right now. We are not going to deal with the internal deep muscles of the iliac. Don't worry about that right now. But the basic muscle groups in the abdomen are important here. And these should all be on that first slide. I did put this in. This is a transverse section through the body, identifying the location of the diaphragm. And the diaphragm has this huge central tendon holding it in place through which the vena cava passes so that blood can get back up to the heart. The esophagus and the aorta also pass through openings associated with the diaphragm. Here are the internal intercostals. Here's the pectoralis major, okay? This is up near the thoracic cavity. Here are the external intercostals. You would not normally see the internal intercostals on individuals that were very lean, but you might see pectoralis minor. And then we have muscles that move the humerus, that move your arm. These are very, very small. So teres major, triceps brachii, and so forth, biceps brachii, supraspinatus, and so forth. Deltoid. I recommend going and looking at all of these on that first slide. All right. I just wanted to keep the book content available to you. I don't know how these look in the book for you guys. They all look kind of grainy to me. And so here's a listing of all the muscles that move the humerus, what their target, the primary mover, and so forth are. Muscles that move the forearm, biceps brachii, brachialis, and so forth. Again, very difficult to read here. Go back to the first slide. We do have another list here for the muscles of the forearm. What are the primary movers, the origin, the insertion, and so forth. And then muscles that move the wrist, hand, and the forearm, just as a separate table. They are here, again, miserable to read. So please go look at the intrinsic muscles of the hand. Anything on that first slide is fair game for the exam. In terms of the hip and the thigh muscles, again, I did not circle anything here, although this one looks okay. We have the gluteus medius, gluteus minimus, and the gluteus maximus has been cut away so that you can see these deeper muscles. The gluteus medius is sectioned here. This would be the gluteus maximus here, which is also sectioned away. These three muscles are very strong muscles, and a lot of times when people are having hip issues or hip pain, it's usually the gluteus medius that needs to be strengthened. Gluteus medius is attached to the vastus lateralis through the IT band, the iliotibial band, which is a real thick chunk of connective tissue. And so if you have a strong gluteus medius, that helps keep your knee nice and healthy. Again, if we come up here, tensor fascia latae, I need to slow down on how I'm speaking, rectus femoralis, vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, which is the opposite of the lateralis, right? The sartorius that wraps around, the gracilis, or the graceful muscle, little tiny small thin muscle, but this muscle is responsible or helps us balance when we stand on our toes. And then we have the adductor longus right here and the pectineus. So, and the psoas major, ooh, that one hurts when you pull that. A lot of times soccer players will pull psoas major, adductor longus, gracilis, or adductor magnus as well, because these are all interior muscles that you might use to kick a soccer ball with the inside of your foot. Down here we have the adductor group, which is going to be the adductor brevis, adductor longus, and adductor magnus again. And then we have the semimembranosus and the semitendinosus over here. These are the gluteal regions and how they move the femur. And then the muscles that move the femur that are in the thigh that are associated with the tibia and fibula. This is pretty easy, not a whole lot in the associated with the tibia and fibula. The gastrocnemius, the lateral head and the medial head. The soleus, which is underneath, so it's closer to the bone. We have the Achilles tendon, okay, the calcaneal tendon, which is attached to the calcaneus, okay, and then we have the plantaris, which is a long band of connective tissue. The popliteus, which is a kind of a muscle that wraps around the back, and then the soleus was cut away here. The fibularis longus, tibialis posterior, flexor digitorum, which is going to pull up on that Achilles tendon, fibularis brevis, and the flexor hallucis longus. So again, these are the muscles that you need to know for the posterior side. Whatever's on that first slide is what is fair to ask. We have the tibialis anterior, the fibialis longus over here, extensor digitorum, which comes down and associates with the ankle, basically. And then I'm not going to be asking you for the names of the connective tissue right now. Here are the muscles that move the feet and the toes. So, yeah, the adductors, the flexor digitorum brevis, they're all little tiny guys. We don't ask too many of these. And that's it. So, what I'm going to say is, don't go blind as I do this to you. There we are. We basically aren't asking you any of the muscles, about the names of the muscles in the feet or in the hands, but everything on the anterior view of the human, of the superficial muscles, and the posterior superficial muscles are fair game. We do have the gluteus medius right here, gluteus maximus. You never really see the gluteus minimus unless you remove the maximus and the medius. So pay attention to being able to label this. Something that you might want to do is just print this one side out, white out all of these, okay? Put it in a plastic sleeve, protective plastic sleeve, and get your Expo marker, thin Expo marker, and just start labeling. See how many you can remember, and then compare to the answers here. Once you're done, erase it. Start again. That's how I did it, and you'd be surprised how much you can learn quickly if you just start at the head. Do the arm, do the abdominal groups, do the legs. You just break it down into groups, and you got this, you guys. I have faith you can handle this.